Aloha and welcome to this module on open source software. I think this might be one of the most important, if not the most important module of the entire semester for you. That's because learning how to develop open source software and being familiar with the open source software paradigm will profoundly transform and increase your experience as a software developer. And as a student, there is no better time to become involved with the open source software community. You're not beholden to an employer. You haven't signed some kind of agreement that makes it difficult for you to work on open source software in your spare time. And the development of successful open source software as a student is something that can have tremendous value to you in the workplace or when you go look for a position in graduate school after you graduate. So there's a whole lot of reasons why it's a great thing for you to become familiar with, particularly early on in your computer science education, so that you have a while to actually develop the software over the course of the next few semesters. So in this module, there's a brief screencast that gives a little overview of the history of open source software. That's very important to know. And then we'll talk a little bit about licensing, because there's a bunch of different open source software licenses that, and I don't, in this class, I want you to develop your software under an open source license. I don't really care which one it is. Different people have different preferences. I personally prefer the GPL licenses for my software, but you may choose BSD or some other license. That's perfectly fine. The other thing that's important about learning to operate in the open source software community, because you're not co-located with your peers. So in other words, in a company, you might work at the in the same cubicle space or within a few cubicles of all of the other people working on your software. But almost by definition, when you work on open source software, the other developers could be spread all over the world, and so you have to learn how to communicate effectively with them in a distributed and asynchronous fashion. The other thing is that when you build software, even if it's proprietary, but if it's built using open source components, you need to get help from the community. That's could be any place on the globe. And what that means is it becomes incredibly important for you to know how to ask questions the smart way. And this is a very important essay. It was written by Eric Raymond a long time ago. 2001 he started, but he's continued making updates. The last one was in 2014. And it's become a very rather lengthy article. And asking questions the smart way, it is not trivial. Okay, I can almost guarantee that there will be a moment in the semester when one of you asks a question using Slack or something else, and I'm going to try to very diplomatically and in a very friendly way respond, hey, what would be the smart way to ask this question? Okay, and if you ask questions the smart way, the reason why that's so important is because it dramatically increases the odds that you'll actually get an answer. Okay, that's the whole thing. How do you get an answer that's helpful to the questions that you have? And if you ask questions the smart way, you're more likely to get that good answer. Couple optional, the 3 prime directives of open source software development. You can read that, which tries to distinguish between open source software as just any old thing that was uploaded to GitHub with an open source license. I mean, that's technically open source software, but it may be a zombie project. No one looks at it, no one uses it. The 3 prime directives for open source development provide some criteria which hopefully can help ensure that people will actually use your software, and other developers can learn how to extend it and maintain it and so forth. Couple optional essays I think you might enjoy. The Cathedral and the Bazaar, which was a seminal article about how open source software improved the experience of this actual technology, and then about this .NET guy who realized that open source software was just really good for him. There's one essay here. Reflect on smart questions. You'll write that by next week, and you'll use Stack Overflow to find examples of Stack Overflow questions that are smart and other questions that are not so smart. And I think hopefully by doing that search, you're going to become more familiar with how you can pose questions in a smart way, which enables you to interact with the open source software community in an effective manner. So that's the module. I'm really excited about it. I love open source software. I think it's a really incredible community, and it's a really important thing for you to do, and you're at the exact right moment in your life to get involved with it.